2 of the financial reports that are on the top, and that'll come into play when we start going through the budgeting process. I have a profit and loss statement for the first 6 months, just kind of show you where your revenue and expenses were, and then a donor detail for the first 6 months so that you knew who was giving and how much they gave throughout the year. The next thing under that is going to be this packet, which is just basically everything that's in the PowerPoint is on here. That way you didn't feel like you had to rush and try write down every single thing that I had, because some of the slides have quite a bit of verbiage on it, so that you can just take any notes kind of on top of that maybe we discussed that you might need. The next 2 things, I think you guys may have seen these before. It's just it's a copy of 2 forms. One is the grant request form, and then the other is the mission expense report, and we'll go over those. And then there's 3 different sample budgets that we'll talk about as well. So all you need for the beginning is just the packet, and then we'll get through the forms and all that stuff kind of as they come up. Just letting you know, so that's what all of this is, so that you have the packet. Thank you guys so much for coming and for being here for all of this. I know it's been a long morning, and to end it talking about numbers is usually nobody's favorite thing to do. I'm weird, and I love that kind of thing, but just thank you for being here and for being willing to kind of sit through this and everything. So we're going to get started. We're going to kind of be talking about 2 things. The main thing that we're going to be talking about is going to be at the end, which is going to be budgeting, and that's what the majority of the time will be about. But what we're going to talk about first is just kind of some policies and procedures that you guys, I think, already know, but just to kind of reiterate, as we're getting bigger and as we're getting more experience with things, just wanting to make sure that we understand these are the policies and procedures that we have in place, and just kind of making sure that, so that way we're kind of getting those systems in place now before we're at a larger place to where it would be hard to implement some of those things in the future. So the first one that we're going to talk about is cash donations. So I think something that I kind of said that we could do in the past was if you had a cash donation and you were needing to pay for like mission expenses, you could use the cash to pay for some of those expenses. After talking with the financial advisor that has been kind of helping us, and she was the financial director for the underground, so she's been doing this for 10 years, and just for me, just in the time that I've done it, I realized that it's not necessarily wrong to do that, but it can make trying to keep accurate records a little bit more difficult, because you don't have exact cash, you don't know exact numbers of how much you got for revenue and stuff like that. There's not large amounts of discrepancies, but there still are discrepancies, and we do value being as accurate and transparent as we can. So one thing that we're going to start doing moving forward is that all cash donations must be deposited into the bank account before that they can start being used for expenses. Like I said, it just makes it easier to track donations and expenses accurately, and then also it helps to increase the paper trail so that we have all the records that we need for all of that. I know that's something that I know specifically that we had done in the past that had been okay. That's something that we're going to try and steer a little bit more away from in the future. Do y'all have any questions about that one specifically? So I know that I think we even talked about at the beginning that you guys were going to need to do something like that. Does that change anything? Or do you have any questions?
Will we have access though to the debit card? Because like with us, like we did the silent auction. Mm-hmm. We raised funds for the back to school bash. Like we're needing to shop for that. We have cash from that, but we need access to it like right away, because
which is one of the reasons why, and I'll get to this one here in a little bit to how all that will work. It's we're really excited that we now have purchasing cards that we can now give to the mission leaders, and you guys are one of the main ones that we're like, okay, you really need this. So that you don't have to worry about having to be reimbursed. You can just have it directly, and you don't have to worry about that at all. So the sooner that we can get you guys set up with that, the sooner you can start utilizing that. Your card can come in the mail. So it usually takes about a week, maybe 2 weeks for that to come in the mail. But then once you have it, you can start using it immediately. So I'm hoping that after we can kind of talk a little bit more about getting some of your information and stuff set up with that. I know that you do have cash right now that you're gonna need to use to pay for some of those things. So what I would say that we can talk a little bit more afterwards about how to handle this specific case kind of in the interim. Because I know that
once we have that purchasing card, it'll be just easy peasy.
it'll be easy breezy. But I know that and there may be a lag between when you get that and knowing that you guys need to start purchasing some of those things now, so we can talk about how to handle that here at the end of it. But does that make sense? Okay. Expense reimbursement. The form, I think the expense form is in the packet that I gave. This is how the majority of mission leaders pay for any and all of their expenses that they have. There are some that, like for instance, we have Be Unique. They have some like recurring monthly transactions that, I mean, she doesn't have to have me pay, like reimburse her monthly. I just go on ahead and set up the payment for those, and I handle those directly. But everything else is handled through this. I hadn't been as strict about like requiring an expense report, and you don't necessarily have to use the one that I gave. So I know that everybody has a preferred method of how that works best for them. But what I would say is if you're not going to use the one that I gave, having something that at least tells me what it's for, what kind of, like what category or account that it would need to be tracked to, and then the amount that it was. And the main thing is making sure that all those amounts add up to the exact, so like pennies and everything, so that way we know the exact amount of what that is. And then just all the receipts that are along with it. Pretty much everybody's been really, really good about holding on to receipts and turning those in when they do that, and that's great. We're also hoping to, here in the very near future, to get the forms put up online so that if you do want to use these, you can submit them electronically.
I do have a question. How often do you want us to, like, should we be submitting receipts and stuff once a month, or do you want them once a week, or do you want them as we get them? What's easiest?
I think that would be, it probably depends on the ministry. Like for instance, Be Unique, they submit them monthly because she has monthly expenses, and it's easier for her to be like, okay, this is I paid all in 1 month, rather than having to do it weekly for her. But if you are paying for a bunch of things like all at once during a week, and you need to have those funds then, that's fine. But I know that for y'all's ministry, it's more seasonal.
Yeah.
So there's a couple months where you don't have anything. I'm not going to require you to turn in an expense report that says $0, but you had nothing. It's more just kind of as the need of, okay, when are you needing to get reimbursed for it? I wouldn't hold on to stuff for like 2 or 3 months or something like that. I would say if you've paid for something, try to have that receipt to me within the month. That way, just make sure that we're keeping the records like up to date and everything. But once we start getting purchasing cards, and I'm just gonna go ahead and go over that because these are very, very similar. You're not dependent upon getting reimbursement when you use the purchasing card, but I'm not going to be able to look at a transaction right off the bat and know what those things are for. So I'm still going to require that an expense report and the receipts be sent. And that may be something where it's like, okay, well, if I'm only doing one every now and then, I may just send you one now. But then knowing that, okay, during Christmas season, I'm just going to send her all of them for November and December at the end of December, or at the end of November, or something like that. The point of it is not to be bureaucratic for bureaucracy's sake, or just like to keep like, it is important to make sure you're keeping accurate records, but that's not why we're doing it this way. It's one, to make sure that we're keeping everything clear and transparent and up to date, but also to be helpful and useful to you guys. And we're willing to work with you guys on that as well. Like I said before, I wouldn't hold on to things for months at a time because receipts get lost that way. I do that all the time, and I'm in charge of doing this, and that's the easiest thing for me to get a receipt for me to me. Like that shouldn't be a problem for me, but I mean, as more time goes on, it's easier to lose receipts. So I'm going to move into the purchasing card thing because did you have a question?
I did. With the purchasing card receipts, can we use the app for that? And is that something that other people can use or just staff? Like, is there the QuickBooks app where we can take pictures of things?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Is that something that the rest of us could use?
Yes, so you can do it on QuickBooks. In order for them to be able to upload it to QuickBooks, they would have to have their own login. And there is a cap as to how many logins we can have with our subscription.
Okay.
However, it does let you connect it with Expensify. And I have not used it before, but I do believe that we can have
an app where we can just take a picture of the receipt and then it'll
upload it in. So I'm looking at trying to see, because we could do everything electronic. That would make it a lot easier. That way you don't have to mail things in. You take a picture of it, and then if you need to if it gets thrown away, that's fine. But I'm still researching what's the best way to do that and how to do it in a way that not just people that are on staff, but that all of the mission leaders can do that. Yes, that's a great question. Okay, so moving on to the purchasing cards. Because you are getting a card that is in Wildfire's name, we're not just wanting to give this out to every single mission leader that does receive finances with us. So, we have a couple of requirements that we require for those that do want to be able to use those. First one is you have to have signed and adhered to the finance policies. In order for anybody to start, even if they do expense reimbursement, in order for anybody to start being able to utilize the funds that have been donated or fundraised for their mission, they have to have those signed. Just to make sure that we know that, okay, these are the rules that we have to follow. We want to make sure they know those before they've started handling the funds. They've also had to submit an annual budget. Those are the two things that we require of anyone that does financial services. Same case for the purchasing cards. We also want to make sure that there's enough donations that are in that mission's account in order to cover expenses. So if they have a budget of needing to spend $200 a month, but they only have $50 in there and they don't have money coming in regularly, we're not going to want to give them a card so that they're charging it when the funds aren't here. Which, that hasn't really been a problem. The mission leaders that do have finances, they either aren't using them if they don't have a lot of money in their accounts, or they've done a good job of trying to make sure that that's fundraising, keeping that as a constant flow. Another thing is that we would like to make sure that they have been utilizing financial services from the network for at least a quarter, just that way we have a significant amount of time that we can be able to track to make sure, okay, you've handled spending your funds responsibly, you haven't used them for personal reasons, you haven't gone over, and like your account hasn't gone in the negative, just to make sure we have be able to kind of test what their financial responsibility is. Which, I mean, you guys have been with us for over a year, so those things you guys have already fully met. The next thing is we said, I put monthly on here. You must submit monthly expense reports along with necessary receipts. If you send weekly, that's great. That may not work for everybody, trying to make sure that you're sending those in weekly. That can sometimes be a headache. As long as we're getting that monthly, that's fine. I would say if it is in the month of December, because I know y'all do Christmas, trying to have it there relatively quickly just because it is end of year and trying to get all that stuff done, not having to wait till February to finalize kind of what all that stuff is, but that would be helpful. We kind of already covered that when we were talking about the expense reimbursement. Does anybody have any questions? One thing I didn't say is in order to get a purchasing card, the only things that I would need for that are your name, your address, and your social security number. It does require that you have your social security number because it is technically attached to Wildfire as the organization, but if something were to ever happen, like someone had a purchasing card and they did like illegal things with it. They just wanted to make sure that like it's attached to an actual person and not just somebody that like doesn't actually exist. That's all it would be required. Any questions? The last thing is the grant process. Something that we had talked about that we really hope to be able to do, hopefully after our fundraiser, because right now the funds are completely there, but we'll be able to grant grants to mission leaders that need it. If Wildfire gives a grant to a mission leader, there's not any strings attached to it, just in the sense that it has to be used for your ministry. We're not going to give a grant of $1,000 to Angel Helpers and then Angel Helpers writes a check to themselves for $1,000 and then uses that to go on vacation. That don't see that being a problem, but it's just to make sure that that's being communicated. The process of how that works, we first would like to have the mission that is whoever's needing and requesting to have a grant meet with either the finance or the executive director. There's two ways that kind of grants can go about. One, Wildfire is some organization, like the Underground, they have granted, it's been like, hey, we've had a financially blessed year. We just want to bless you guys. Here's a check, do with it what. Another is, okay, say Backstitch was wanting to go to a conference that was like it was going to learning about how to handle depression in women or something like that has to do with, like for Be Unique, she was needing to go, she's going to a trip to South Africa and didn't have the funds for it. She had a specific need that she was needing met, but the funds weren't there. So something that she did is that they would meet with either the finance or the executive director just to communicate what the need is to us, saying this is what I'm wanting to do and this is how much it would cost to cover that. And then you would submit the grant request form, which was one of the ones that I gave you guys. This is your packet too, by the way. I just kind of stole it. Do you have that in your journal so I can just look at it? The grant request form. Is it? Yeah. It's really, like, this one is pretty simple. Just like saying who you are, contact information, the amount that you're requesting, and then the reason for it. So having this with you when you come, just so we can have something on record, just to kind of show what it is that you guys are needing. So then you'd meet with us. Then if you met with Taylor but hadn't met with me, or you met with me and hadn't met with Taylor, we would then meet to pray about and see, like, okay, Lord, what can Wildfire do in order to help meet this need? We would then schedule a follow-up meeting where you would meet with either one of us, maybe both, to where we would discuss, okay, this is what Wildfire can do. We'll either transfer the money over or figure out what needs to happen on our end to make sure that you guys get the grant that you guys need. Is there any questions about grants or what that process looks like? Just want to focus a little bit more self-explanatory, but